Right. Jocko,
Yep.
how do you set your mind right to do anything?
Well, if I'm going to do something, let's say it's something that I don't necessarily feel like doing at a particular moment in time, what I do is I go do it. I go do the thing. So if I don't feel like getting out of bed, I get out of bed. If I don't feel like working out, I go work out. If I don't feel like going to jiu-jitsu, I go to jiu-jitsu. If I don't feel like sitting down on my computer and writing, I sit down on my computer and go writing. I try not to overthink it. I try not to get to the rationalization phase where I'm thinking, well, actually, I did work out for 3 days really hard, so I probably could use a little bit of an extra rest today. All that stuff, all those big lies that you tell yourself, I just avoid all that. If I'm supposed to do something, I go do it.
So if something actually legitimately hurts in your body, do you blast through it, or is it so ingrained in your system now that you can just navigate that? You're like, that hurts. Okay, well, whatever, just like flow, go.
Yeah. I know I don't look like the smartest person in the world, but I'm not that stupid. Yeah, if I have an injury, clearly I will work around the injury. Now, this much I will say, if I have some kind of an injury, I still move. Like, for instance, I had neck surgery and it was gnarly. It was gnarly. I was really jacked up. They cut through the back of my neck, and you don't realize how much work your neck muscles are doing all day holding your head up. And so everything hurt, every movement. And there was one position that I could get into, laying upside down on my bed, that would take all the gravity off my head, and that would be the only position I could be in where I wasn't hurting. But after like a day and a half of laying in that position, I got up, I walked down to my garage gym, and I walked around in circles. And I did it for 7 minutes, and then I went back upstairs and got back in that comfortable position. So even if I'm injured, I will do what I can. That's what, when people ask me, well, what should I do if I am injured? I say, do what you can. So you hurt your shoulder, your left shoulder, cool. You use your right shoulder. Do squats, do leg work. There's always something that you can do that's going to help you stay on the path. And so that's what I do. I'm not sitting there with an injury or a tweaked knee saying, I'm just going to push through this and it's going to get better. No, you have to allow things time to rest when they get injured. But I do believe that movement and continuing to get the blood flowing is definitely beneficial.
Why is it that people end up, as they get older, they start stacking up all these reasons why they can't do things? Like when we're kids, we just get out and do it. Mm-hmm. Like we don't think about it. I look at my son, like he doesn't ask questions about the stuff. Like if I ask him to go squat and do something, he's like, okay, let's do it. Like he's not thinking about my knee hurt and this. Like why is it? Is it just like we stack up all these like fear aversions, or what do you think it is?
I popped a link down below for Create creatine gummies, 50% off of them. So after today's video, check them out. 50% off allulose sweetened gummies. These have 1.5 grams of creatine per gummy. So it makes it so you can low dose your creatine. You're talking about getting in shape for summer, might make some sense. Helps preserve a little muscle mass by keeping your strength high, even if you're in a caloric deficit. There's countless bodies of research when it comes down to creatine. So I'm not blowing any smoke. The stuff is legit, but the little gummies make it easy to sort of microdose creatine throughout the day. So I find I don't get the water retention that I would get if I were to just drink like a 5 or 10 gram bolus of it at one sitting. Not to mention 50% off is pretty darn awesome. So that link is in the top line of the description underneath this video. Their new sour apple flavor, holy smokes, especially with no added sugar in it, off the charts.
I think as people get older, they get better. You actually become more skilled at making excuses. So when you're younger, you know that you're kind of lying to yourself, you push through it. But as you get older, you can rationalize better, and you can make excuses better, and you can say, well, I did read on the internet that it said that actually this certain amount of rest after this certain amount of work is going to be more beneficial and better for longevity. And I'm actually more concerned about longevity now than I am about being strong, or I'm more concerned about being strong than I am about longevity. And you just figure out a way to convince yourself that you don't need to do the thing that you don't want to do.
You're almost like taking like a Pavlovian response and like twisting it. It's like instead of, the typical stimulus response where something hurts, I don't want to do that again. But you're almost rewarding yourself with the fact that, hey, I skipped that workout and I still came out just fine. So I can like do it again.
Yeah.
And skip it again. You know what? I didn't become obese overnight, so I can skip it again.
Yeah, I've always been very conscious of that, of you can't make up a workout. If I skip a workout today, I can't ever get it back. And look, I'm not saying there's not times when you don't need rest, because certainly there's times where I just completely, I know I need rest. I know I need steak and rest. You know, like that's when I used to train MMA fighters a lot. It's very clear to see when they're overtrained. And so you'd have a guy that's doing really well, and I'm training with these guys. So let's say I'm doing rounds of jiu-jitsu with guys and they're competitive and it's good matches. And then after 3-4 weeks, all of a sudden they're getting beat up by me, by some of the other people that they would normally do well against. And you could tell it's very clear that they're overtrained. So overtraining is absolutely a thing. It's generally, in my opinion, you have to really put out and have time to overtrain. It's hard to overtrain, but you can definitely do it. And then when you do it, yeah, you absolutely are going to need rest. So I'm not saying don't take rest, but one of my rules is if you need rest, take it tomorrow. Take it tomorrow. If I'm really tired today, I'll still try and push through today. And then if I'm still tired tomorrow, that's a pretty good sign that, yeah, you're a little bit overtrained. It's time to relax a little bit. Time to take some time and get a rest day.
Yeah, and you look at most of the evidence, like true overtraining is so flippin' rare. Like people aren't typically, the recreational person is not in an overtrained state. Like they're just not. Like you're usually a pretty elite level athlete, and you're going to notice a performance decline. Like getting injured or something like that, that just happens, right? That doesn't mean you're overtrained per se, right? So how does someone that is in this state where they feel depleted, they feel overtrained, they feel that way, do you suggest they pivot and just move, or do they schlep through the thing they normally do? Do you think that they rationalize this and say, okay, like maybe I'm beat up, maybe I don't hit the weight room, do I go a different route? Or do you think they just say, hey, just turn the blinders off, get stupid and go?
Yeah, well, we're not talking about getting stupid. If you have, sometimes you'll have your back will be tweaked, or you'll have a tweaked hamstring, and it's like, that you can't go and do squats, at least heavy squats, when your back is tweaked. So what do you do? Well, maybe you go and do some jump squats, and you go and do jumping split jumps. Like there's a bunch of other things that you can do that you're not going to put your back in jeopardy, and you're still going to get good work. So like I said earlier, if I have some kind of an injury or I have some kind of a fatigue, I'm going to go do what I can. And also, what is the percentage of time that people don't feel like working out, and they go to the gym, they start working out, and the workout is perfectly fine? That's a large percentage of time for a large percentage of people. You don't feel like going to train jiu-jitsu. You don't feel like paddling out to go surfing. You don't feel like going to shoot your bow. You don't feel like going and doing pull-ups. And you go in there and you start doing them. And by the time you're actually in the gym, you're already like, yeah, I know why I'm here. And then by the time you're into your session, you're kind of down. And then when the session is over, you're stoked. So I think it's very important to remember that psychological mountain and that psychological terrain of, I didn't feel like doing it. I went and did it anyways. It felt good while I was doing it, and I felt way better when I was done. I always remember that. So when I don't feel like doing something, I know that's just a fleeting little weakness and excuse-making liar that's telling me not to do something. When I know as soon as I start it, I'm going to feel better. And when I'm done, I'm absolutely going to feel better. So I think that's important to remember, and that's what I would recommend. Do I recommend pushing yourself to a point where you get injured? Of course not. That's dumb. Do I recommend pushing yourself through moments of weakness to where you actually are doing the thing that you didn't want to do, and now you recognize and realize and feel why you want to do it? Yeah, I recommend doing that for sure.
10 minutes of high intensity compared to 30 minutes of just getting moving. Like, where does intensity, training to a percentage of failure, come into play for you? Again, also talking to a recreational person, someone that's just, because this is all relative, right?
Yep.
Like, scale it however we want. But someone that's saying, okay, like, am I pushing it to 90% today? I mean, you look at most of the literature, it says the intensity does matter, but sometimes that's what hurts the most. Is it always going to be intensity, or are there going to be days where you say, hey, like, that intensity, I don't want to do it. But in spite of that, do you go intense, or do you say, hey, the best thing for me to do is still just get moving, and you're still conquering that inner bitch, so to speak.
Yeah. There are absolutely times when I'm going through the motions. I know that I don't feel like being in here. I'm not pushing myself, but I'm in there like a robot going through the motions. And I think that is infinitely better than not going through the motions. And generally speaking, once I'm going through the motions, guess what I feel like doing? I feel like stepping it up. So yeah, I think you need to push yourself, and oftentimes you need to push yourself to where you're reaching your capacity and you're pushing yourself hard and the intensity is high. Absolutely. And if you don't do that on a regular basis, you'll form a habit of not being able to push yourself. And that's not just a physical thing. That's a mental thing as well. Being able to say, oh, this sucks. I don't care. I'm going to do it anyways. There's a physical component to that, and there's a mental component as well. And the physical is strength and it's cardio, right? We train and we can fail with our strength and we can fail with our cardio. So we want to make sure that we're pushing the envelope on both those items.
How do you bring yourself to the present without doing some hippy dippy stuff to like bring yourself there? You know, like I'm talking when it is hitting the fan, when you're working out, and the thing that you're thinking about, and I'm using working out as a reference, right? We can pivot this at any point to business, to whatever. Point is you're in that moment, it sucks. And the thoughts that are coming into your head is, what does this feel like 10 seconds from now, 30 seconds from now, a minute from now? You're always like future tripping, right? Boom. Like that's happening at the nanosecond. It's happening at the second, at the minute, right? You're in the middle of a set and you're thinking about the end of the freaking set, right? But how do you contain that? Like, how do you bring yourself present? Because people think present, they're like, okay, meditation. Yeah, I don't want to meditate. No, there's got to be some tactics to bring yourself present and gamify it. I mean, you're conditioned at this. You're good at this. This probably happens unconsciously for you. Mm-hmm. But do you recall any ways that you would bring yourself present?
Yeah. You ever do the super squats, 20 rep squat workout? You ever do that?
Like Widowmaker type stuff?
It's the book Super Squats. Mm-hmm. You take a weight that you can do 10 times, do it 20 times.
Hell yeah. Yep.
For me, that's a workout that has many times. I'm very aware of what's happening. Yeah. I'm very aware of how bad this sucks. I'm very aware of a part of my mind saying, hey, I don't even care if I'm strong or not. It doesn't matter. Like, this is not worth it. You don't need to do this. You're probably going to get hurt. You're going to tweak your back on this next rep. There's no one that's watching you right now. No one knows if you did 17 or 20 and these last 3, what are you really going to get out of them? I've had all those conversations in my head. And I think I've always said that's the workout for me that will test me the most. And you know what I do? I just keep doing them until I'm done. I will not surrender, because I know what it feels like when I'm done. I know that the reward at the end of doing what you're supposed to do is well worth the pain that you're feeling in the moment. So that's what I do. I think, all right, yep, this sucks right now. I'm actually kind of happy when it sucks that bad. Good. I know I'm pushing myself. I know I'm earning this. I know I'm going to feel better when I'm done. I know it's going to make me stronger. I know all those things, and I'm going to keep going. So that's what I do. All those voices and those debates that I'm having in my head, I just tell them to shut up, and I think about what I'm supposed to do. For lack of a better word, doing your duty. Doing your duty is to complete this evolution, and that's what I'm going to do.
Would you say that you've sort of changed your relationship with pain?
I'm sure that along the way in my life, you learn how to just accept that this is going to suck and I'm going to keep going. So perhaps, but I'm not, I also don't want to sit here like, oh, I don't feel pain and I'm a cyborg. That's not true. Like, it sucks. It sucks. There's workouts that I do that absolutely suck. And that's the way it is. It's okay.
I think by relationship with pain, I mean, do you ever remember a time where you say, hey, this is pain. I'm going to change how I look at pain and actually lean into it, embrace it, realize that this is not necessarily suffering. This is a signal. This is a signaling device for growth. This is a signaling device for betterment. Mm-hmm. And I think what I'm hearing from you is it almost sounds like it's happened unconsciously for you. And probably because you may not call yourself a cyborg, but you're pretty awesome with that, right? Like you really have your brain dialed. And I think about myself, or I think about people that are maybe trying to find their way with this, and they have to gamify it. And they say, hey, wait a minute, I've got this pain, right? I used to have this thing. I had the almost kinesthetic awareness where I had a pain switch in my brain. It was this big red switch, and I would visualize this red switch. And when I would get to that, LT2 lactate threshold point, especially like as an 800 meter runner when I was younger, it was like, that's just, you're at that point. I could flip that switch. And when I flipped that switch, it was almost like I had another gear. Mm-hmm. And it was because that was my switch where it was a big red switch and it said pain on it. I could flip it in my head, and that kinesthetic awareness was like, all right, I've changed my relationship with it. That pain is off. It's still there, but conceptually it's off. And it was at that point that I developed sort of a different relationship with pain, where I could discern what pain that was not good was, mm-hmm. but I could also say, okay, this is pain. I can lean into it because I know this is helpful pain. So there developed this new relationship with it. And just wondering if you ever have experienced something like that, or if you have any sort of tactics that you deploy in those kinds of situations.
I wish I had a super motivating and philosophical, awesome answer for that. But going back to basic SEAL training, which you're going to experience high levels of pain and suffering. And I just accepted it and drove on and kind of enjoyed the fact that I'm doing something, and there's other people that are quitting around me, and people that look like they're stronger, faster, smarter, and better than I am as a human. And they, in most cases, were better, stronger, faster than I am as a human. And to see people like that not being able to push forward because whatever we're doing sucks. To me, that was it was something that I knew that I had and that I could do that some other people couldn't do. So, oh, you're bigger than me? You're stronger than me? You're faster than me? That's awesome. I'm going to keep going. And 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 I'm going to keep going and going and going and going. And oh, wait, what are you doing? What happened to you? Why are you going over and ringing that bell? I understand. You're mentally weak. And I'm going to push through it. So I never thought about that until this conversation that we're having right now. The pain for me was good. Here's something I thought about. I was at SEAL Team 2, and I'm not good at anything, right? So ocean swims, wintertime ocean swims at SEAL Team 2. Normal summertime ocean swim, I'd probably come in middle of the pack. Winter ocean swim, guys are putting on 2 wetsuits. They got 5mm wetsuits on over top of a 2mm wetsuit, so they can barely move because it's freezing. I go out with a normal kind of 3-2 wetsuit, which you'd wear in the summertime here in California surfing, and it's freezing. But guess what? I can move, and I'm going to put out hard. So in the wintertime, I could come in, top 10% of a swim, just because I'm just gonna freeze, but I don't care. So same thing with runs. I'm definitely not the fastest runner in the world, but if we're doing a run in the wintertime and guys are all bundled up, especially for the first 2 miles, and I get out there in a pair of shorts, no shirt, and my shoes, and I'm going to run as hard as I can, and they got to stop and take off their clothes, I get ahead of them a little bit. So yeah, I mean, I think pushing through stuff is probably something that I realized I could choose to do, and that was going to be beneficial for me to make up for all the other deficiencies that I have as a human, which is a multitude.
At what point in sort of your teenage years did you realize that this was kind of your superpower? I mean, you had to have noticed it.
No, I don't think I did notice it. I noticed that. Yeah, I don't really think I noticed it. And look, I grew up in the 70s and 80s, and there wasn't the information that we had back then just didn't exist. The information that we have now just didn't exist back then. Like, you'd look at a muscle and fitness magazine, and there was no real comprehension that anything that was going on in these magazines was a possibility for me living on a dirt road in the middle of nowhere. To get from here to there didn't make sense. They're talking about these rep schedules, and you're like, wait, what is this? What does this even mean? It wasn't even like a feasible thing. Didn't make sense. And yeah, so for me, I think as a kid growing up, I definitely was strong-headed, and same thing. I knew I wasn't going to be the best athlete. I wasn't the fastest kid on the soccer team. And what could I do? I could train hard. I could work hard. I could be very aggressive. And those things seemed to be the only kind of talents that I had.
So was there ever a point, maybe even in your childhood, your teenage years before enlisting, you're like, okay, SEALs is what it's going to be? Or was it sort of okay, I just want to do hard? Like, Navy seems like a good way to go. I mean, was it ingrained in your mind from a pretty young age that that's what you want to do, and you had a laser goal? Or was it sort of, I'm just going to keep going hard. I'm just going to keep going hard, and life's going to take me whichever direction it takes me if I just keep going hard?
Yeah, no, I 100% wanted to be carrying a machine gun and be in some kind of commando, sneaking over the beaches into the jungle, killing bad guys. That's what I 100% wanted to do when I was a little kid. And then when I realized you could get that for a job, I was so excited. I was so stoked to see that, oh, you can actually do this. And then I found out about the SEAL teams. I heard that it was the toughest training of any of the military branches, which is not necessarily true. The Ranger schools, extremely hard, and Special Forces, Q course is extremely hard, and their selection is extremely hard, and Marine Corps has their Raiders. Like, they're all really super hard. But what I heard was the SEAL training is the hardest. They have the most people quit. I actually heard they had the highest casualty rate, which is based upon the World War II guys going into Normandy. That's where I heard this fantasy from. But that's what I heard. So I figured these are the guys that are going in combat. This is the hardest possible training. That's what I'm going to do.
So when you take that, what did you envision training look like versus actuality? Because I feel like that's where people have a disconnect with a lot of things in life, right? Like unrealistic expectations, or so unrealistic expectations where they expect something to be one thing, they put all their stock into that, and then when it's something different, they just can't deal with the, target change, right?
Yeah. For me, I would say SEAL training was actually fairly close to what I thought it would be. Yeah, it was fairly close to what I thought it would be. It was a bunch of physical training extended over and over and over again. And that's what I thought it was going to be, and that's what it was. It is surprising. What's surprising about SEAL training is when people quit. That's what's surprising, because you think about these people that are joining the Navy to be a SEAL, and they've signed for 6 years of their life. They've probably told their girlfriend, their mom, and their dad, and their grandparents that they're going to be a Navy SEAL, and they go in the Navy, and then day 2 of training, they quit because it's cold, because it's wet, because you're tired, which to me was insane. It was incomprehensible to me. So that was a little bit surprising, and I knew it had a big attrition rate, but you think going into it, oh, it's going to be these weak guys, they're not going to make it. But plenty of strong guys, plenty of strong, good athletes, they don't make it. And so I'd say that was a little bit surprising, and they still haven't figured that out. They don't know who's going to make it through that training. Yeah. Doesn't matter whether you're a wrestler from Iowa, or an Ivy League kid that was on the rowing team at Harvard, or you're a kid from the inner city in East LA. It doesn't matter which one of those people you are. All of them could make it. All of them could quit, and we don't know. So it's a pretty strange environment. But what it was like for me, the training, it was what I thought it was going to be. They're going to push you hard, and it's going to suck, and we're going to get after it.
Do you think there's an importance to having sort of a moving target approach with your training when it comes down to just hitting the gym too? Like, so many people want to have a plan. Like, and there's so many people that preach that on the internet, and I'll give you my opinion. I mean, and hopefully it's probably not going to persuade your answer, but my opinion is I don't always have a plan. I don't usually have a plan. I have a direction. I might have intention, but I'm not this like write out my workout that morning. I see that a lot of times as like one additional step that doesn't need to be made. I'm feel like I'm decent at listening to my body enough to know that I know what I probably should do, and it's usually exactly what I don't want to do, kind of the same boat. But what's your take on that in terms of moving targets, right? Someone goes in the gym with this intention. Like, is there merit to almost deliberately moving your target where you say, I'm going to go in, it's Monday, I'm going to do chest. So you walk into the gym, you say, I'm going to go do legs. Have you ever done that? And is there something to that in your opinion?
I'm sure there is, but I think people have different personalities.
Yeah.
And some people have very particular personality and they like to plan things out, and they're going to go in there and they're going to plan out, never mind what they're going to do today in the gym. They're going to plan out what they're going to do for the next 4 weeks. They're going to have a whole cycle of workouts and periodization that they're going to plan for and go through, and they're really into that. There's other people that they don't know what they're going to do when they walk through the threshold of the gym. They're going to go in there and, like you said, they kind of know themselves and they're going to go and work. And I think there's everyone in between. So I don't really have a strong opinion about whether that's good or bad. I know what I'm going to do. Where I'll get hit is like, I'm feeling good today. Like if I ever get out, the little tiny plates, the 2.5 pound plates, if I ever get those out, it's because I'm feeling good. I'm like, I'm going to see where I can go today. Yeah. But normally it's like, hey, once we're to 2-3 wheels, like that's what we're doing. And I'm not like, oh, well, maybe I could get to, maybe we can go 320 over here. Like I have to be in a particular mode where I'm getting out the little tiny plates. And I know that. Yeah. And there's sometimes where it's like, I'm going through the motions, like I said earlier, and I'm not going to push myself very hard. Normally for me, if I'm feeling good about a particular type of workout, I'm going to go get after it. It's a little bit the opposite of what you just said, which is, hey, if I feel like doing this, I'm going to do that intentionally, something else. I kind of will say, oh, I'm feeling like pushing hard, let's say Metcon today. I'm feeling good. Maybe I didn't roll jiu-jitsu yesterday, and so I kind of have a little extra energy. Cool. Maybe I'll just go Metcon and go super psycho on a Metcon. And then, whereas if I train jiu-jitsu for 3 days straight, super tired, and I know I don't need any additional Metcon work today, well, maybe I'll just move some heavy weights. And it's a little bit easier on that neural pathway for my Metcon. It's a little easier just to get in there and lift some heavy weights, and that's fine. So where it's important to go to the gym and do what you don't want to do, if there's something that I want to do that I'm feeling good about in going into the gym, I'm going to do that thing for sure. I'm going to capitalize on that feeling that I have of wanting to lift heavy, or wanting to do a hardcore Metcon, or wanting to do some high rep workout that I haven't done in a while. Like, well, let's go.
I'm sure a lot of it comes with just the reps. I mean, too, like once you've done it for years and years and years, you have an internal barometer that's kind of like, this is my body telling me not to do something, or this is my mind telling me not to do something, right? Yeah. There's a huge difference, right? You go in there and your hips aren't moving, your back. If I deadlift, I'm going to blow my back. Okay, that's different than being like, oh, box jump sounds hard today. Like that's a completely different ballgame, right? So I know, and even after decades of training, I still have that voice, right? I mean, we all do, right? You're talking about leaning into that. Where I get hung up, and this is an ongoing debate that I have, especially if I talk to people that are newbies, people that are getting started. I'm like, okay, I want to motivate, but I don't want to make them feel like this is so unattainable that they break down, because I realize that people are wired in different ways. But I also get concerned that a plan enables them. Because then what happens when you throw a wrench in their plan? Like what happens when they go on vacation? Are the people that are so married to a plan, are they the people that when they end up on vacation, they just say, I'm going to take this as rest, right? But if you train them, you teach a man to fish, right? It's kind of what I do with nutrition. I try to teach people where the fundamentals are there. It's like, it used to be about this plan. Then I'm like, that. Like because what happens when they don't have the plan? Like the moment that a curveball is thrown, they derail completely. You got to teach them just the fundamentals that can be ingrained. So it's like I wrestle with that. It's like I have problems with. I like to ask that question because it's like I have problems with plans, but at the same time, I do know that a plan is a plan is a plan, and it's going to help you and give you that direction.
Yeah, just like anything else in life, you have to have balance with what you're doing. And if you're just starting to work out and you've come up with this plan, or you've been given a plan by your trainer, and then you go on a business trip for 3 days and you lose your mind and don't do anything and eat a bunch of junk food, obviously that's bad. So you've got to be somewhere in the middle where it's like, yeah, I have a plan. I know what I'm doing. I understand the concept of the direction that I'm heading in. I know that it's not going to be perfect. And when it goes off track a little bit, it's not that big of a deal. I'm not going to let it fly completely off the rails. I might make some small adjustments. So I think just being balanced with that is very important.
You train first thing in the morning, probably because it's just the time you roll out of bed. It's hard to do. But here's a twist on it. Do you ever train purposely in the afternoon just because it's different and because it's harder? Do you ever swap your workouts around? Like say, okay, I usually roll out of bed, hit my Metcons or whatever it is going to be, but that's become such routine. Have you ever stopped and considered that maybe that's the path of least resistance, and that maybe actually like doing something different, being like, screw this, I'm going to do this at 3 p.m. when I'm mentally tired, and now I have to compartmentalize and break my continuity of thought from work and break my continuity of thought on this, and I'm going to go do my Metcon now.
Yeah, that sounds cool. I generally speaking work out in the morning because that's when I can get it done and no one's going to bother me. I know it's not optimal for strength training. You should train at 2:00 in the afternoon because that's when you've got the warmest and you've got the best fuel. I understand all that, but for me, the way it's always been, if you don't get it done before the world is awake, then the world's going to get a vote on what you do. And whether that's at work, with business, in the SEAL teams, someone's going to come up. Yeah. Someone's going to call you like, hey, we need to go and get this done. Hey, we got to go work on this. Hey, by the way, this paperwork needs to get filed today. And all of a sudden that workout that you were planning for 2:00 or 3:00 in the afternoon, it ain't happening. Okay, well, then you do it at 5. Well, guess what? Your wife's calling you at 5. Hey, I can't pick the kids up. Can you go? Oh yeah, I can. So next thing you know, it's 7. And now, well, what am I doing? Do I train jiu-jitsu or do I work out? Well, I'm going to train jiu-jitsu because that's a skill set. Whereas, you see what I'm saying? So for me, it was always just about just getting it done, because otherwise life gets in the way. And so for me, it was always get it done. And that's why I do it early in the morning. I don't care when anybody works out. It's fine. And whenever it works best for you as a human, that's good. There's also times where I have other priorities that outrank working out first thing. So for instance, if I have let's say I'm writing an article and the article's due in 3 days, the first thing I'll do when I wake up in the morning is work on that article because it's due, it's the priority, and I'll work on it for an hour or an hour and a half, and then I'll go work out. And that's fine. And I kind of enjoy that. I kind of enjoy spending a little bit of time doing something like that and then going to lift, because I enjoy physical activity to break up mental activity. So if I have to work 5 hours today on a podcast that I'm preparing for, I would like to wake up, work on it for an hour and a half, go work out for an hour and a half, come back, work on it an hour and a half, go shoot my bow for 20 minutes, get done with that, work on it for another hour, go surfing, come back, work on it for an hour, go train jiu-jitsu, work on it for an hour, and I'm done. So I got my 5 hours done, and I also did a bunch of cool stuff, and it's much more, I just enjoy that more. I don't enjoy being looking at my computer for an extended period of time. So if I can, I'll break it up. I like to break up mental activity. I like to intermingle mental and physical activity as much as I can.
Yeah, you also maintain intensity that way. I mean, it's like it's like you look at a descending ladder, right? Look at that. It's like the idea is to maintain intensity in like a descending ladder Metcon or something, right? Mm-hmm. And it's like, I think that's genius in so many ways, just for the monkey mind, right? Mm-hmm. It's just like an ascending ladder is like horrible because like you get in your head and like it's so mentally tough, but like the descending ladder, almost constructive workday in a way. And that's the one thing I do like to have a solid plan with, is like chunking my time with that, right? Do you find that you have sort of a limit? Let's talk mentally for a second, a limit at sort of your mental threshold for time before you start to lose potency with your efforts. Like, do you think you found this sweet spot, like, okay, 20-minute chunks, 40-minute chunks, and then you need to break it up?
What am I doing? What task?
Let's say writing, because that's highly cognitive, especially for someone that's into it.
Honestly, if I have to do anything, I can do it for an unlimited amount of time. I mean, I was in the military for 20 years. You're going to do some stuff for a long period of time, and you learn how to focus on that thing and get it done. When I went to college when I was older, and I was an English major, and one time I took 5 English courses in one semester, which was dumb because I had so much reading to do, but I would read Saturday and Sunday, I'd read 10 hours straight. And I don't like reading. Even though I was an English major, I don't like reading. I don't like sitting there and reading. I don't like it at all. But I would sit there and read for 10 hours and just do what I was told to do. And by the way, this is another dumb thing. I read actually every single word that I was assigned to read in college. I read it. No one does that, or at least no one that I knew did it. And that's what I thought I needed to do to do well in the classes. So if I have to do something, I will do it for as long as it takes to get it done. I don't care about anything.
When you're looking at sort of, well, actually, let's pivot for a second because I know
optimally. Now, if you want to go optimally, which probably would be a more realistic question as opposed to just how long can you do something. Optimally, yeah, I like to write for an hour. Like I've told many people over the years, oh, you want to write a book? Write 1,000 words a day. It takes me about an hour. So what does that mean? That means in 3 months you have a book. You write an hour a day, and that's 90,000 words, and you'll edit it down to 80,000 words, and you'll have a book. So yeah, how long is it optimally for me to do something? An hour. An hour works great. When I shoot my bow, like my little run through my range takes 45 minutes. And I feel really good. Boom, we're done. So yeah, probably about an hour, I guess, is for me is an amount of time that I like to do something. And then after that, I'm doing it because I have to, and I will do it.
Now you said a word that's it's a trigger word for me in some ways is optimal, like optimize, right? Mm-hmm. If you had to pick one, optimize or maximize?
What's the subject matter?
Okay, anything. Do you want? I mean, okay. Let's take shooting out of the equation. Let's just take general life. Mm-hmm. Do you want to optimize for something? Do you want to? I could put a negative spin on it and frame it, I guess, by saying spend all this time like splitting hairs and yada yada. But reality, mm-hmm. Do you think most people would get more out of their life? I shouldn't say more out of their life. Would they garner more success in terms of at least their fitness and at least maybe their business acumen and whatnot if they were to focus on just doing the thing and maximizing or optimizing? And at what point does optimization become important? At what skill level? When someone has 80% mastered maximization and then they need to optimize? Because we have a whole world of people that like to optimize right now.
It sounds like you're way more into the optimized word than I am. When you obviously it means something to you that I don't know what it means to me. I don't think it means the same thing. So when you say optimize something, what do you mean by that?
I think because I'm in the health world, right? Uh-huh. I think optimize as, okay, let's get focused on X amount of minutes of this because this is optimal and the literature shows this. And living in such a world of scientific literature for so long, I've almost become a little numb to the whole optimization thing where I pick, are we majoring in the minors a little too much? Mm-hmm. But on the same tone, I work with special forces operators, specifically in the Army, so you probably hate me, but
Army's awesome, man.
No, I'm just kidding, man. So, with them, it is a lot more optimization. It is, the cognitive nutrition piece. Like they are trying to squeeze the extra couple percent. So I respect and love the hell out of that. But then because of that work, then when I look at Gen Pop, I go, wait a minute. Are we missing the boat by focusing so much on optimization that we're actually getting them lost? Mm.
So give me an example of what someone in Gen Pop could go down the wrong path of optimization.
I'll give a nutrition example, mm-hmm. And this is going to be very specific just for my world. Mm-hmm. Carbohydrate timing, mm-hmm. right? Let's focus on specific carbohydrate timing to optimize cognitive performance for this, for that, to optimize my workout. Let's have carbs X amount of times, X minutes before my workout, X minutes after my workout. Okay. In an elite level, yes, that does matter. Carbohydrate timing in a depleted state, certainly we can have that discussion. But the more that I get into this and the longer that I do this, I realize most people just need to understand the basics of depleted versus not depleted, mm-hmm. relative performance outcomes as a result. And the quicker that they can learn that, then maybe, in years they can focus on the optimization. I understand I live in a nutrition silo. So mm-hmm. does that directly reflect out to the rest of the world and other decisions you make in life? Candidly, that's why I'm asking you.
Yeah. When you first kind of said it was a trigger word, I got a little nervous. I was like, what did I say? here's what I thought of immediately. And I've talked about this before. How big can you make your deadlift? And this is what I do. So I guess I don't optimize or maximize anything, because if I just wanted to get my deadlift big, I would not ever run. I would stop doing jiu-jitsu, and I would eat as much as I possibly could and become a huge dude. And I would be, I would maximize my deadlift. And probably, what would I add? What would I add? Maybe an extra 10, 15% to my deadlift? And would it be worth it, all the other sacrifice? No. If I just wanted to get good at pull-ups, well, then I would lose weight. I would not lift legs anymore, because I would want my legs to be tiny. And I would do a lot of cardio so that I would be smaller. And yeah, I could do more pull-ups, but I couldn't squat anything. And I would have to sacrifice all that to be able to do more pull-ups. So what does that mean? That means I usually take something until I'm like feeling like I'm pretty good at it. And that making more improvement is going to start to sacrifice excessively in other areas. Now, I do go through cycles of, I'm going to get strong. Like Echo and I will talk about, it's squat cycle right now. Yeah. Like I'm going to be squatting right now, like trying to get jacked, getting bigger, getting stronger. And then I'll go off, because I'll get to a point where it's like, okay, yeah, I know what it's going to take to add 10 more pounds to my squat. And it's another month and a half. It's no running. It's like it's limited jiu-jitsu, which I would never do. But all those things to maximize in one area, I don't really do it. I don't maximize in any area. So I guess I don't think, for me, optimize isn't the opposite of maximize. For me, kind of, I don't know what the opposite word or what the word would be for, hey, I'm going to be like as good as I can at various things. I'm not going to be great at anything, but I'm going to be okay at a bunch of stuff. And I think that's kind of where I land on this. And same thing with food. Like you talked about, okay, I saw guys in the SEAL teams that had super strict diets, and they were counting their calories and everything was super clean. And it was actually, it would sometimes be a problem for them, because we'd go out in the field and you're in some foreign country and there's no chicken breast and broccoli available. And you got to eat MREs, or you got to eat something called mermites. Mm-hmm. And so all of a sudden that messes guys up. Yeah. And if they're not used to it. So, we used to say this in the SEAL teams. I didn't make this up, but it certainly is a common thing where, if you had the choice of being a Ferrari or an F-350, look, the Ferrari certainly is more highly tuned. It can go faster. It can handle curves better. But also, you got to put like a certain kind of gasoline in it, and you've got to get the oil changed very regularly. Like there's all these things that go into that. The F-350, guess what? You turn it on, it's going to go. It's going to plow through some stuff. You can get those things to run off of biodiesel. Like there's all kinds of things that you can do. And so in my opinion, it's better to be just a F-350 than it is to be a Ferrari. And look, part of that, am I biased because I was never a Ferrari? Yeah, part of it's because I was never a Ferrari. When guys were super fast runners or super fast swimmers, I was never that guy. Or even guys that were super strong, but they couldn't run. Like you'd have guys in the SEAL teams, they were super strong, but they couldn't run. So for me, it was, hey, how can I be decent at everything? And I never over-indexed it. Well, not never, but I tried to not over-index on one thing in my life. Yeah. Like, hey, this is who I am. This is what I'm going to be. Even as much as I love jiu-jitsu, I didn't surrender working out. I didn't surrender trying to learn. I didn't surrender trying to be a good frogman because I love jiu-jitsu. No, it was like, yeah, jiu-jitsu was part of the whole gig. So yeah, I don't think I really maximize anything. And if I was to say optimize, it sounds like maybe optimize what you're saying is it can become an excuse of, hey, I'm trying to optimize this, so I'm going to do the minimum amount of work and get this everything perfect when life isn't perfect, and maybe that could become a problem.
Yeah, we're focusing on so much minutia that you forget the big picture. And what you described is pretty much to a T, brother, what I look at it as, right? Maximize isn't maximize your deadlift. Maximize is maximizing my deadlift, my squat, my running, maximize, big picture, right? And life is always going to throw extra into that bucket of maximize. Oh, you're a dad now. Okay. Now what? Well, you maximize, you get a bigger bucket or you figure out how to fit that in your current bucket. And sometimes it doesn't make the cut anymore. And that is part of maximizing. Optimizing, you say, okay, well, I want to optimize, if something's broken in a business, you might optimize it. If something's broken, there's elements of optimizing that fit into maximizing. But I think when it's a chronic obsession with optimization is when you forget the maximization, right? Like I'm big into, we'll save this because FYI, we're going to do another video and I want to talk about this more in another video because it's more relevant, but I'll touch on it now. I am a big fan of fasting, intermittent fasting, not because I'm obsessed with body composition or whatnot, but because exactly what you said. I want to know that if the time comes where I don't have fuel on hand, I'm fine. Not because I'm trying to baby myself and do this. It's not to be more fragile. It's to do just the opposite. It's because, sure, the fact that it's great for body composition is a side effect. I would do it either way. The fact that I can be more optimal and be more maximal at the same time. So it's like how you were describing it is exactly how I look at it. There's one more thing I want to cover in this topic because this is really good stuff. And it's something that I honestly want your sincere opinion on for me also as a dad. As a dad, there's always going to be, maybe you don't feel this, but I feel it, an element of guilt. It's like it kind of lives with you where, okay, I'm sacrificing time with my kids for this. I'm sacrificing, there's just a world of different sacrifices that you make. And we talk about getting up in the morning, we talk about these things. And I'd say the biggest thing I wrestle with is not how do I get up in the morning and get to the gym or get it done or sweat my off or hurt, right? It's not that. I'm going to find a way to do that. The biggest demon that I battle is I'm doing this. I know it's good. I know it makes me a better father for the greater good overall. But sometimes I'm missing those precious mornings with my kid. Sometimes I'm missing because I'm here in the gym when they wake up sometimes. A lot of times I am. And sometimes, not always, but it's not on the cards for me to sit at home and wait for them to get up. It's no, I need to get this done. And they need to see that dad works hard. But there's an inner guilt that sits in there sometimes. And you may or may not feel this, but I know from talking to a lot of people that a lot of dads, present dads, good dads feel that. And I just want to know if you have any, I don't want to call it advice, but an opinion on that.
Well, imagine getting up in the morning and patting your kids on the head and going on a 7-month deployment that you don't know if you're coming home from.
Exactly.
So for me, I had that whole, that whole thing, and doing that over and over again. That's that put the perspective of what it means to be there as a dad. And I had this conversation with many of my friends over the years. For thousands of years, dads have been leaving and going and fighting wars or going on sailing. Like you're sailing to the new world. You have 3 kids. You're going to be back in 5 years, if ever. And guess what? The kids are fine. All of our ancestors were raised by the moms because all the men were out fighting wars, going on crusades, going out on hunts for days and weeks at a time, going on voyages around the world, going exploring, going to capture new lands. That's what men have been doing for thousands and thousands and thousands of years. All of our ancestors did that. And all of our ancestors were raised by the moms, and all of our ancestors watched their dads go away on the horizon, sometimes came home, sometimes didn't. That's the way it is. So when guys would feel guilty in the SEAL teams about, I feel bad about leaving my kids, I'd say, hey, your kids are going to be fine. Your kids are going to be fine. This has been happening for thousands and thousands and thousands of years. Maybe it didn't happen in the 80s when there was no war going on. Maybe it didn't happen in the 90s. On a large scale, but World War II, those guys left, and their deployment was, when we win, you can go home. That's what their deployment was. So it's really not that big of a deal to work out in the morning and have your kids get up while you're not in the house. If you really want to be there for your kids, wake up earlier, work out earlier, and then bring them down for the workout. I did that with my kids a lot when they were growing up. I would get up, work out, and as soon as I was done, I'd grab them, they'd come down, and we'd get a cool workout in. Yep. Example that my kids hate this workout to this day. On the minute, every minute on the minute, 5 burpees, max pull-ups. and 10 minutes, 8 minutes, 6 minutes. But that's a really good preschool workout. Yep. And so something like that, go do that with your kids. But I don't have a sense of, I don't have, let's say, an overwhelming sense of guilt. And I don't think you need to have an overwhelming sense of guilt if you're going to go out and keep yourself in good conditions. Well, and for you, this is how you make your living, right? Exactly. This is how you supply, this is how you feed your kids. This is how you give your kids a roof over their heads. So yeah, you're going to go and do what you have to do because you're providing for your family. So I don't feel, I don't think there's any reason to feel guilt there. Hey, will it sometimes you get yourself in a position where you mess something up and you accidentally or purposefully prioritize something that's going on with your kids? My middle daughter made it to state in wrestling her senior year. And in California, this is the biggest wrestling tournament in the world. It's one true champion. There's no divisions. It's one division. And she made it to state, first kid to make it to state from her school in 35 years. I had an event to go to that I couldn't get out of. And so I watched her wrestle and I flew and I left. I watched her wrestle one match. She lost. I left. She wrestled another match. I missed it. She won. I was flying back and she lost and she was 2-0. So she wrestled and worked so hard for her whole life to be there. And a lot of that was driven by me. A lot of that was because I love wrestling and I love jiu-jitsu. She was doing that and it was a result of me. And so there I was. She had reached the pinnacle of girls wrestling in California to make it to state, and I wasn't there. That sucked. Did I feel bad? I felt awful. Did she understand it? 100%. She was like, oh, I know, Dad. That's what you do. Yeah, Roger. So guess what? Did it impact her negatively? Actually, no. Because you know what she's seen me do her whole life? Work hard. And when you're in the SEAL teams comes first. The SEAL teams comes first. You will not sacrifice work for family when you're in the SEAL teams. That's the reality. Now, can you balance it a little bit and go to shore duty for a little while and give your family a little bit more time for 2 years while you're working as an instructor? Yeah, you can do that. And guess what's happening at the end of that 2 years? You're going back to a SEAL team, you're going to be in a platoon, and you're going on deployment. And that's what's happening. And as soon as you get in that platoon, when your phone buzzes and it's a text from your wife and it's a text from the platoon chief, you respond to the platoon chief first. That's what's happening. That's what we do. And there's the kids that come out of these, they're fine. And your kids are going to be fine.
And those skills of prioritizing trickle down into your kids, and your kids learn that priorities matter, just like every single dang thing that we do and every decision we make every day. It's a choice of your priorities, right?
Yep. And health-wise, we all know this. You start skipping workouts and you start prioritizing the family, you're not going to be around for your family as long as you should be. And they know that. So yeah, for me, it's really no factor. My favorite thing to do in the world is hang out with my wife and kids. My favorite thing to do in the world. But I have other things that I have to do, and we all do.
Option C, make them work out with you.
That's a good one.
Where can everyone find you, man?
Yeah, I'm in all the normal places where people are to be found, I guess. I have a website, Jocko.com. I have social media, which is at Jocko Willink. And then I've got JockoFuel.com and OriginUSA.com and EchelonFront.com. These are companies that I have that make people smarter, stronger, faster, and better.
Right on, brother.
Right on. Thanks, man.